Hey guys, Rexasaur here and welcome to Update Monday. That's right, it is the 12th of May 2025, it is a Monday and I am not at work, I have a day off, so I'm able to do an Update Monday for you all. It is of course just a Monday patch notes, but because everyone loves an Update Monday, you guys can have it. I'm feeling generous. I am quite tired because it's been a long weekend. As I'm sure you all know, this weekend I was in Nottingham for a Warhammer The Old World tournament. It was a 5-game, 2-day event. We went up on the Friday and then we came back yesterday. And yeah, the event in itself is a lot of fun. I will be recapping it throughout the most of this video. I'm going to give you a little bit of a TLDR for everything else that happened. Not much, I'm going to be really honest. Last week, I'm just going to check my calendar. Oh, nothing happened. Wait. No, I'm 1 week off. Literally nothing happened. On the Monday, I had Warhammer with Richard, but that was covered in the last video. And then the rest of the week was a little bit of painting here and there. Cameron did ask me to lend him some models, so I had to base one of them just to make sure it was tournament ready. And then packing up all my models ready to go off for the weekend to Nottingham. So beyond that, not really much else has happened. I'm not really ready for anything else to happen really. I'm so tired. I'm very happy that I have this whole week off, and then on Friday I'm back on travel, so I'm going to London for the weekend. So the tournament and our adventure. So on Friday, train was at 10:45 from Cardiff. We arrived slightly earlier. Richard arrived much earlier than he had advised me, but I was already at the station at that point, so it's not really much of an issue there. And we got our direct train from Cardiff to Nottingham and had no issues whatsoever, which was very nice. When we arrived slightly earlier than our anticipated time of arrival. We checked in at the hotel, which was exactly 5 minutes away from the train station, which was perfect. We checked in, dropped our bags off, and we made the trip and the pilgrimage to Warhammer World, which is the headquarters of Games Workshop in Nottingham. It was conveniently located, so our being 5 minutes away from the train station, we just followed the canal down because Warhammer World, the Games Workshop headquarters, is very close to the canal walkways, so we just followed that along. Got to Warhammer World. I showed Richard the exhibition, which is where all of the Warhammer armies are basically laid out. Every single one of the models that is presented there are models either in a sort of diorama, so they're like pitted against one another, or they are the Warhammer models that are on the box art of each of the boxes of models that they sell. So that was really, really cool to see all the armies laid out in full. It was my third time there, still really like it. It's really good. And Richard had a good time. It was his first real time there. First real time, it was his first time there. I don't know why I added the word real there. His virtual time. Yeah, and then we spent some time in the store. I bought myself some models, as is the natural course of things. There wasn't really anything specific that I wanted, so I just got what I was going to get anyway eventually, which is a bunch of elf dragon princes, they're called, very elite cavalry, and I got myself some extra dice, and Richard got himself a few other models that he couldn't get normally. These are order only models, but in Warhammer World you can buy those models that are usually online order only because that's where they make them, so they have them on the shelf there. So he got himself an Anvil of Doom, a engineer, I think, for Empire, and then some other models from Lord of the Rings. We had a really good time. Spoke to some other staff, really good. We originally wanted to visit Bugman's, which is the local tavern there. Unfortunately, it was closed for renovations or something, but unfortunately could not have our cheeky pint there, so we went back out along the canal, and there's a Water's Edge pub was along the canal, so we sat down, had some drinks. It was really, really nice. The weather was brilliant the entire time we were there. Then we had food and went back to the hotel where we slept. And yeah, that was basically all we did on that Friday after a fairly long travel. It's 3 hours from Cardiff to Nottingham, so fairly far. Then we had day one of the tournament. So Cameron, my good friend, met us on the Saturday morning. He had, because he had work on the Friday, he hadn't booked that off, was unable to. So he travelled late in the evening and got in at, I think, 11:30 or something, and then proceeded to have to finish painting his army up until 2 a.m. So met him up on Saturday morning, had a really nice breakfast actually for a Premier Inn. I'm going to be honest, it was really good. And then we walked up to the venue, which was about 10 minutes away, so very close by, where we met all the people participating. There were 18 players in total. It was a 2,000 point tournament, so a very standard format. We spoke to a bunch of people. We were, I think, the only newcomers there, so it was quite, I don't want to say daunting, but it was definitely a case of a lot of these people knew each other, had played against each other several times, and we were very much the newbies. But we were instantly welcomed. It was really nice. And then we had our games. So 3 games on day one. My first game, I was just drawn up against Cameron. I learnt that if you put your team names as all the same, the software wouldn't pit us against each other. But we didn't do that because we didn't know, and ended up going up against Cameron. But it had been a very long time since I'd played my Warriors of Chaos, and Cameron had amended his list significantly since I last played him. So I felt there wasn't a point in changing that up. The first battle ended up as a 12-8 loss, so Cameron won, and the differential meant that he had 12 points and I had 8. I was shot to pieces basically very quickly. All my very strong core, basically the the Dragon Ogres that I had, all got shot to pieces, and then ended up not really doing anything for the rest of the game because of that. My spawn did very good. My Dragon Lord was very much handicapped, and this became a trend for the entire tournament, where my Dragon Lord was unable to really use all of his move. The Bretonnian, which is what Cameron was playing, have a item which prevents the ability of the fly ability, specifically with your enemy. And I've only got one flying unit, and that's my dragon. And without that, he becomes kind of just a really slow walking monster. So he was very much prevented from doing anything, which was very irritating. I did manage to get some things done with him, I think. I can't even remember. But it very much, it was... My wizard was what was doing most of the damage. And yeah, in the end, didn't really pull it off. So I lost my first game. But that put me in chance then with my second game, because I was going to go against someone else who had lost their first game. And I ended up going against one of my opponents called James. He is a commission painter in his day job, and he had a beautifully painted Orcs and Goblin chariot list. So he had 17 individual chariots, some of them in one unit of 4, but otherwise they were all separate units. And the scenario was Mountain Pass, which meant that I had a pretty unfair advantage going into this game, because the entire point of his army is to outmaneuver, and because it was Mountain Pass, which instead of paying long ways, you pay short ways. So, I basically just stood my ground. He charged into me and wasn't able to really kill anything except for my infantry, who were meant to die. So, and he also rolled really badly. He had some really bad shots, really bad rolls when it came to combat, and I was just able to dismantle him turn by turn. So it was an unfortunate loss for him. It was 18-2 in the end, so I won with 18-point differential. His 2 was because he picked up my infantry, which are worth a quarter of my army. So yeah, but there was some real moments near the end, especially, where he got really frustrated with his dice rolls, and I could, you need 3s and you roll 1s and 2s. It just feels really bad. But what that allowed me to do then is our game was finished pretty quickly because of that. and I had a chat with him for like 2 hours, and he is one of the most fascinating individuals that I think I've met, especially this tournament specifically, but for a while. Like, you don't really get a chance to just meet new people in my day-to-day. So being able to meet someone who shares the same hobby, and then I just got to learn a lot about his life, his background, how he became a commission painter, what he did before, all of that. And it was one of the best conversations I think I've had in a very long time. It was just really, really awesome to converse with him. And it was my first tournament win, so pretty happy with that. Then my third and final game of the day, I was unfortunately pitted up against a mirror match. So it was Warriors of Chaos versus Warriors of Chaos, and I was pitted up against my opponent Matthew, who was a very good player. He ended up third, I think, overall. So he was playing a very different list to mine, and it showed. His list was incredibly mobile. It was very much a case of, I'm running away from your dragon and dismantling the rest of your army in the process, and he got far away from every single thing that I could do to him. I didn't have any shooting other than my wizard, and he had bought an anti-magic list, so it was cavalry, all of whom had an item that basically makes my wizard worse at casting. So it was very, very painful, and I lost 20-0 that one, so it was a total victory for him. I just wasn't able to gather any points. I did manage to get 2 units, 1 unit, just a unit of knights, pretty sure. Yeah, not great. And then it was a tough battle. The great thing though is that being able to play against a Warrior Chaos list, he knew a lot of my rules better than me. He had played all of the tournaments locally in Nottingham, including the ones at Warhammer World, so he knew the game back to front, and I learnt a lot in that game. I learnt a lot of rules that I'd been forgetting, rules that I'd been misremembering, or rules that I didn't realise existed. So I felt like that game is the one that taught me the most, despite how, I don't want to say frustrating it was, but how much it felt like I was completely outmatched, from both an army perspective and a game perspective. So yeah, lost 20-0, but I learned a lot, and I really brought that into my next games, so quite happy with that. After that, we went out to it was like a Malaysian-centric restaurant all together as a group. I think there were 15 or 16 of us in total. But it was like, Malaysian was its focus, but it did also provide Chinese and other Asian Oriental foods. And I had a pad thai, which was phenomenal. It was a really, really great pad thai. Really enjoyed it, and I got my lovely Asahi. I really like an Asahi beer. And we all just conversed, had a nice chat. It was really, really nice. It's about everything, a lot of laughs. And then we went back to the hotel, and we basically just crashed. Well, we called our wives respectively, and yeah, we crashed. And unfortunately, we had our first mishap then. That day, basically Sunday was a big mishap day overall, outside of the games, where we went to sleep, or attempted to go to sleep, at around 11. And then I'm pretty sure I did fall asleep, but then I woke up maybe midnight, 1, I'm not entirely sure. But the room was a sauna. It was so hot in the room. I think in Nottingham it got up to 24 degrees Celsius, so very hot for this time of year. But our room was boiling, and I was like, Richard, please open the window. And once we did that, it cooled off enough that we were able to get some sleep, although we still woke up pretty early. But yeah, and we woke up to a awful message from my dear Cameron, who was staying in a different room to us, which was a screenshot of the train times, and our train that we had picked to go back on a Sunday had been cancelled, which is a very British problem. So our only choices was either to take a later train, which rather than being a 3-hour journey would have been a 5.5-hour journey. So we were like, no. So we instead took an earlier train, and then when we went to the games, to the arena, We advised the tournament organizer, Rob, who were like, unfortunately our train's been cancelled, so we have to leave earlier than anticipated. This is the time of our train. And he was like, no problem. What we'll do is we'll just let your opponents know that you have to leave early. We'll push forward the game 2 of that day, start for that if needed. And but it all worked out in the end. Game 4, I played up against Ed Milton, who is a resident of Bath. He had driven all the way up here rather than taking any transport, for the same reasons as why we were regretting taking transport, with it being cancelled for us. I think Ed was my favourite battle that I played against. Mostly because I was more at ease knowing what my army was. Unfortunately for me, it was also Bretonnian exiles, so I had to deal with the fact that my dragon couldn't fly again. So that was 2 out of 4 battles couldn't fly. So that was annoying. But Ed was an absolute brilliant person to converse and play against. We had a really good time. We had so many laughs, just stupid things that we were laughing about, whilst also then all the decisions we were making. I feel like it was the closest one. It ended up with him, it was really close. It was 12 and 8. So once again, he got 12, I got 8. But there were so many choices, so many pivotal choices that were being made. My wizard rolled so poorly. He ended up being, there's a rule called stupidity, which as War as a Chaos, you can become stupid at the start of the battle. You roll a dice, and on a 1 you get the stupidity rule. On a 2 to 6 you get a bonus, like a buff to your stats. So rolling a 1 is unlikely, but it does happen, and he became double stupid, so you rolled 1 twice in a row. And then we were just insulting him. We had a wizard war. It was really, really fun. And then we had a moment where he had a baron on a Pegasus, and he charged my wolves, my wolves are a 46-point unit. They're really, really cheap. They're there just to be harassing and annoying, which is exactly what they did. And my wolves didn't get wiped in the first round of combat. They actually stayed for another round, and he was like, what the hell is happening? It was really, really funny. And we really, that amongst other things. There were so many little things that happened. He failed a 4-inch charge, and he rolled a 3 he had to roll a 4, he rolled a 3, and it was just like, what, on 3 dice he rolled a 3. That's what it was, because you roll 2 dice, you discard the lowest, and you re-roll it when you've got a roll called Swift Stride, and he rolled a 2 and a 1, re-rolled the 1 to a 1, so didn't make the charge. There was a lot of that. And then my dragon basically just walked around the entire battle. It was the first time I got to use my dragon's breath attacks, because he couldn't get in range. He was just walking around. He did do things with his breath weapon, so that was good. But once again, same thing with Cameron. It was very similar. It was a Bretonnian exile, so he had cannons and things. And his cannons dismantled my dragon ogres. They weren't able to dismantle my sorcerer. He had to get his melee to do that. And then, it was I wouldn't say it was a painful dismantling. There were so many funny moments. It was really, really good. I really enjoyed that battle. It was, definitely my favourite battle of the tournament. But unfortunately I lost. And then, so I was, at that point I was 1 and 3. And then my final game was against Richard. So we just got paired up because we were at this point quite at the bottom of the leaderboard. And I was very confident going to this. This was definitely just a game just so that we could get it done. We had a train to catch. And I had used everything that I'd learnt in my 3rd battle and then in my 4th battle with Ed. And I knew exactly what to do to just maintain dominance over that game. And I think there's an element of, this is Richard's first ever Warhammer tournament overall. And we were both really tired, so I think in terms of thinking, both of us were very much at our low, and my army is definitely a low thinking army, whereas Richard's is not so much. And also Richard had learned from game 1, he faced off against, I think, the person who ended up in 2nd place. He learned straight away that his army was not what it needed to be. There was a lot of things that just didn't work in his army. and also the dice rolls weren't really with him when it came to like his ambushes and other stuff. So, and having gone through the tournaments, fought against other players who were all very decent, seen other battles, learnt rules, I was able to really use and abuse Richard's weak points. So I won that pretty comfortably, which is unfortunate for Richard, I guess. But I think both of us knew at that point that Richard had a really big uphill battle to face, just because of the way that his army composition was. However, we now know what, and we made a bunch of lists on our way back from Nottingham, and I think we know now what the competitive scene actually is like, because this is where I think we kind of fooled ourselves, because we had all made our lists fighting each other using strategies and things that we'd seen online, but I don't think it's the very Sun Tzu, very famous quote of "a plan never survives enemy contact." And I think all of us had built lists thinking that they were very good, and then when we came up against a list from competitive players who had played like 100 to 200 games competitively of Old World, we realized that we were very much in the deep end, and we were unprepared for what we were about to face. And I think Richard suffered the most of that, mostly because, I mean, he's only been in the hobby for a year. I think he's doing insanely good. He did pick up a bunch of points. Some of his games were closer than the other. I think we all came to a realization that a competitive game of Warhammer is not about killing points, it's about preserving points. And that meant we've all made renewed lists for whenever we next play. I think all of us are going to take a little bit of a break from it. But we've all made these new lists that are all about point preservation, staying on the board, and yes, having that ability to output damage, but not that being the primary focus. So large units that can withstand, or small units that don't cost a lot of points, really the way to go in this game. It's really become apparent, and I think all of us learned that lesson. I certainly have. My Chaos list, I would never bring what I bought this time. I love the idea of it, and one of the things that I bought was a really big unit of 32 Chaos Marauders, and they cost 300 points all together, which isn't a lot in the scheme of things. And they worked fantastically at being just either a magic sponge, or people ignore them and then they just end up killing like a war machine at the end of the battle kind of thing. That's what happened against Ed. They basically just walked up the thing, killed one war machine, and then turned. And in the end, that's like, well, I spent 300 points to kill 80, which isn't quite as good. But because of the way that the scoring happens in Warhammer, I saved 300 points. He didn't kill off the unit, so he didn't get those 300 points. And my dragon was still alive, so that's 900 points, which is why you only got 12 of the scoring rather than like a 15 or 17, which he probably should have had, to be honest. So things like that. But I wouldn't take that unit anymore, because it is a unit that doesn't do anything really. It's a scary block of wounds. It's a lot of wounds, but it doesn't do anything. Whereas Matthew, who I played against and was using Warriors Chaos, had 3 units of Chaos Knights, who, for him, also didn't do anything, but they also didn't die. And they were easier to ensure they didn't die, whereas my Marauders died every game except for that one game with Ed and against Richard, where Richard was very kind and let me just go through his skeletons with my flails, which are just stupid weapons. So yeah, it was certainly a wake-up call for me in my army list building. So I've made a few lists, my Warriors list, specifically an Elf list, and we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, my next tournament is going to be, so there are 2 tournaments at Firestorm, which is my local Cardiff one. They're one-day events. So we've got a 2-day in October, which is also Firestorm, but there's 2 one-dayers, one in June and one in September. I will be going to the September one. June's too early. It's in less than 3 weeks, so I'm not ready for that kind of stuff. Especially, I don't have a list that's anywhere near ready for that. But by the point that September comes around, I should have something ready then. I'm probably going to play Elves. That'll give me a good indication of what I'm doing, and then ready then for the 5-dayer in October. So that's what's happening there. Yeah, then so after the tournament, we had to leave slightly earlier, of course, our train. But we did manage to get to the train, although the train was absolutely packed. We did manage to get seats, which was fantastic. And then, yeah, so we chatted on the train home. We made some new lists. Cameron made a very dirty list. Richard made I want to say even worse list with still Tomb Kings. It was interesting because before the tournament, he was like, "Oh, I'm going to be using my dwarves or my empire for October," but he has since said, "No, I'm going to use Tomb Kings again, but I'm going to do differently now that I know what I'm doing, now that I know how to build my list." And I looked at the list he was building, and I was like, "Yeah, that's what you want to do. It looks great. It's going to be difficult to take down. It's points preservation. That's what it's all about." Yeah, and I'm really struggling looking at my elves, to be really honest. I don't know, having been into this tournament scene, I don't know what I should be doing with elves, because it is tough. And we didn't see any elves at the tournament, which I thought was very odd, because they have quite recently released. Saw 2 wood elves players, but no high elves. Saw 1 dark elf players, no high elves. So I was a little bit like, oh no, what have I done? I've picked an army that actually isn't decent, or maybe it's just that it needs a very specific kind of list, and I just need to find out what that is. So yeah, that was that. So we got home an hour earlier, and we are so shattered. In fact, we're pretty grateful that we took an earlier train, because I think we would have been so dead. But yeah, we got home and then went to bed, and here we are today, on the 12th of May. So that's that. This week going forward, I've got D&D tonight. I haven't done any prep that I said I would do. So I've got to do that today before D&D. And then tomorrow we got Blood on the Clock Tower. And then Wednesday and Thursday, I'm not doing anything, and I don't want to do anything. I might be playing some Fortnite on Wednesday. That would be nice. So that'll be nice. And then this weekend, off to London. To see my in-laws. They're coming over for a few weeks because they've got a walking trip around South Wales. But we're going to London first. We're going to go see Les Mis, and then we're going to see a Globe Theatre production of Romeo and Juliet in a Western style, as in a cowboys and guns and stuff style. So that might be interesting. It probably will be. And yeah. That's what we're doing this weekend. And then back on Monday for my birthday. Yay. Well, you're probably going to get an update Monday again, because I'm not working on my birthday. Screw that. And then I have to go back to London for a passport stuff. Being an adult is annoying because there's so much stuff that you need to do. And when you take time to do hobby stuff, when you come back, because you spent X amount of days not doing adult related stuff, it all hits you really hard. So I've got like so much admin shit that I need to do, and it's just a pain. There we go. I'm sure everyone watching this probably can relate. So yeah, that's been that. I'm really looking forward to playing 40k again, because I've realised that I'm much more well-versed and understanding of 40k than I am of Old World. I do enjoy Old World a lot, but I think I need a little bit of guns in my life at the moment. And then we're going to do some more Old World here and there. So much hobbying. I've got so much to paint as well, so that's going to be my focus for a bit. And then as soon as I'm not in London or gallivanting across the country, I'll be able to play with Andrew, who sent me a message yesterday being like, "Are you free Friday?" I'm like, "No, I'm in London." It's like, "You free this weekend?" I was like, "No, I'm in London." I got really sad. I was like, "Oh man, I really want to play Andrew." So yeah, maybe the week after we can do something. Yeah, basically that. So thank you very much for watching. It was a very long video. I'm sure you understand why. I'm sure everyone is bored out of their minds, and I will see you next week. Have a good week, everyone.